Hi guys, this is DrayYoutube584. I went over my favorite days of 2022 on New Year's Eve, but now I'll tell you about my worst days of the year. Like every year, there were some days that were not good at all. I got upset over stupid things many times in 2022, which was kind of embarrassing to look back at. I know some people are strongly not interested in hearing about people's worst days, and I can respect that, but hopefully you can respect me for making a list about it. Anyways, I don't own the pictures used in this video, and I also used music that tried to fit the item before they come up. I also don't own any of those songs. Anyways, here we go. September 8th. It was my third day of my junior year at high school, and also a bad one. I was in my history class, and I was on a website that I wasn't supposed to be on because we were watching a video in class about the man in the red bandana and answering questions. The website's known as the Top 10s. On that website, this guy tricked me into clicking links that had inappropriate audio clips. After I got mad about it, he called me 3 different words that I will not repeat, as well as telling me to touch grass. In case you don't know, when you tell someone to touch grass, that basically means you're telling them to go away. This caused me to have a panic attack, and I left history class early. I ended up talking to another teacher so I could calm down, that I have a close relationship with. Yeah, until then, I couldn't stop panicking. But fortunately, I had a better afternoon and night. So you gotta fire up, you gotta let go. You never be loved till you make it alone. February 3rd. So yes, for those who are fans of SpongeBob SquarePants, yes, this is the title card of one of the episodes of the show. So about this day, don't ask how this happened, but I ended up saying bad words in front of my father. I didn't get in trouble for it, but this day still sucked because I ended up feeling embarrassed and crying after, since it was the first time in almost 10 years that I was swearing in front of someone else. And the fact that it was even my dad. However, it would have been worse if it was in front of my mom. Not that she would be more upset, but because I would regret it even more since it was in front of a female. January 13th. This entry here is going to make my previous entry seem like hypocrisy. I've had many times that I got triggered by someone swearing from 2019 to 2022, and this was a really bad one. While I was playing Uno with my grandmother and my Aunt Dottie in the kitchen, my grandfather put a channel on, and someone yelled the F-bomb when I wasn't expecting it, which led to me screaming at the top of my lungs twice. The first time I yelled, "What was that bar?" And then my Aunt Dottie said to me, "You know it's only a word, right?" And then I yelled at the top of my lungs, "But he screamed it!" No, like really a high pitch. And after that, I went into the bedroom and started to cry because I embarrassed myself by going ballistic over a curse word at 16 years old. I even yelled at one point in the room, "How old am I?" Then even looking back at it a while later, it was still quite embarrassing. To make this day better though, I got a frozen chocolate drink with my stepdad, John, at Wawa that night. A year later, I wouldn't freak out so hard about it. June 8th. It was one of the last days of my sophomore year, and unfortunately, the worst one as well. In English class, a classmate said something I thought was rude to another student, which got on my nerves. But my last class, which was Spanish, was the worst. My friend Derek in that class was absent the 2 previous days, and then he arrived, and I found out that he got into an extreme fight with someone on the boardwalk 2 days before, resulting in him getting badly bruised and a missing tooth. Then my classmate had the audacity, one of my other classmates had the audacity to nastily talk back to my teacher for no reason. I know I wasn't involved, but it really hurt my feelings. So I was very upset, and then I had to go to the cafeteria. When the day ended, out of anger, I said to my classmates walking out, "Have a better day than my terrible day." One redeeming quality about this day is I went to a restaurant that night for my grandfather's birthday, which was nice. Aside from that though, this day sucked.
The innocent can never last. Wake me up when September ends.
September 5th. Again, this is another title card for an episode of SpongeBob SquarePants. Anyways, it was the day before my first day of my junior year at high school. But it wasn't because I didn't want to go to school the next day that made it bad. Here's why. On the same website I was on 3 days later, someone commented on my post with something absolutely sickening, and I saw it while I was riding in the car with my mom. Then I went into Dick's Sporting Goods with her, and the same guy made fun of me for what happened on the day of what's to me number 1 on this list. Then I stayed in the car alone while my mom was in our store, and I flipped out. It made me furious to get bullied so harshly when I did absolutely nothing wrong. Although I'll admit I should have handled it better. To make this day worse, I was so close to defeating insomnia the night before my first day of school like I have every year. But a sound on the TV ruined it because I thought it was the Snapchat notification sound, and I was woken up. Then I couldn't sleep for hours, and I got angry again because I found it to be infuriating that a split second was taking away all my sleep. I'm glad this day at least didn't ruin my day at school the next day. Cause it was a really bad way to end off my summer break. November 25th. On this day, basically all of the AM hours were bad. I kept waking up that night because I had a sore throat and a headache. Normally when I have a sore throat, it weakens my muscles and it caused me to eventually have muscle pains. And this is the 3rd time it happened. And also the worst. So when I woke up, although my sore throat didn't feel that bad anymore, and my head stopped hurting entirely, my left shoulder blade was hurting very badly. The pain also spread all throughout my left arm as well. It lasted for almost 5 hours, and it was so bad that I couldn't enjoy doing anything. It also seemed like nothing was helping it. I tried heating it, and it felt like I was just stuck with it. Fortunately, it started to get better when it got to noon. The PM hours were better, but not perfect, and I didn't feel like eating a lot. January 3rd. Yep, so this was my first bad day of 2022, and it was awful. This day was going fine until the evening. It was a boring day, but around 7:30 p.m., things turned into a disaster. The day before, a friend of mine on YouTube started to get hated by many people, and it got better on this day because he apologized. However, someone brainwashed everyone into believing my friend was a murderer, He messaged me that his life is horrible now and sent me a link to the video. Then I clicked the link. Then I freaked out. I was in my room having a big panic attack and a fit of anger for almost an hour straight. I'm glad the slanderer at least admitted to his wrongdoings 3 months later, and I'm also not going to say his name. February 27th. Out of all the days I didn't control myself in 2022, this had to be the most humiliating out of all of them. I was at my dad's friend's house and I said something insulting about him and acted like a total man-child. That caused me to get into an argument with my dad in the car. Then when we got to the house, I was so ashamed of myself that I was in tears for over an hour. I felt like I was immature and I was very upset because I felt that I'll never grow up mentally. To make things worse, my dad complimented me that morning about how maturing. And then I just ruined it by taking a big leap in the wrong direction. And I was just harshly beating myself up. June 16th. Usually, my first day of summer break is a good day, but not in 2022. In fact, it was absolute garbage. I did some cool things for the first day of summer break. I uploaded my song Elevators. I played a game with my mom and daddy. I talked to a friend named Con on the phone, and we had a bonfire that night. Now that's where things started to get bad. It was a complete utter ripoff of the previous entry, February 27th, but worse. I started an argument with my parents over something incredibly stupid. It was so stupid that it was even more so than you could even imagine of. Then I went into my... And then it caused something much worse to happen. I'm not going to go over what it is. Then I went into my room feeling what's nearly the most extreme and overwhelming regret I've ever felt in my life for almost 2 hours. So I was crying like a baby, and I was even screaming in my room at one point. I would do anything to not go through that abomination of a night again. Before I get to number 1 on this list, let's go over some honorable mentions, or dishonorable mentions in this case.
100 bad days made 100 good stories. 100 good stories make me interesting at parties. Yeah, no, I ain't scared of you.
January 18th. I was being disrespectful to my teacher that morning just because I wasn't in a good mood. So we got upset, and I had to go to the office to calm down. And I thought of being sent to the office like I was really in trouble. So I got upset, and then I started having anxiety that I wasn't a lot of trouble, and I said something that I didn't really mean. It's something that made my aide really concerned about me, and my parents were also worried that I said it. But then I realized that I had to watch my language. February 15th. This day was going fine until the evening. Someone on the top 10s got very angry because someone was making up lies about a friend 11 days before. So they decided to take out their anger on me, even though I did nothing wrong. What also made me mad was that they apologized for it in the same message. Like, seriously, if you're going to apologize for it, don't send a message. At least they really apologized for it shortly after. In general, February 15th is unlucky for me because it was a bad day in 2015, 2017, and 2022. This date will come up again next week, and hopefully it's better than those 3 years. April 28th. I never liked how hectic the gym locker room gets at school. My mom told me she was worried about how I'd be there in high school. I no longer need to go there, but now wasn't the time for that story. So I lost control because of how hectic it got. And I did something embarrassing that day by acting like there was something wrong with my mind. And I also got annoyed by a student during turn time on top of that. So overall, it was just a hard day of school. September 22nd. What I said about April 28th could be said again about this day, except I didn't behave as bad. However, on this day, I was swelling on it for a long time. It went into the next few periods, and I wrote what my mind was going through on a slip of paper and gave it to the teacher. And it was a teacher that I get along with well. November 24th. Despite it being Thanksgiving, it was a rough day for me, and my least favorite Thanksgiving so far. It was better than the next day, but still bad. The reason why is because I had a sore throat that I felt just barely in the morning, but it got worse as the day progressed. I still ate Thanksgiving dinner, but it was harder to enjoy it as swallowing felt uncomfortable. I ended up going to bed early that night. It was only about 9:15 when I went to bed. Well, here we are at the number one spot. Here we go. January 17th. Guys, don't get mad at me for putting Martin Luther King Day at the top spot. I very much respect Martin Luther King as well as the holiday. But despite it being MLK Day as well as my grandfather's birthday, this day was absolutely horrendous. Remember how I mentioned at number 8 that I had many problems with handling people swearing before, especially in 2019 and after? This one was by far the worst out of all of them. It was so severe as to make it number 1 on this list. I know the person who caused it is probably watching this video, and I'm sorry. And I know you feel bad for what happened. I'm referring to a friend of mine on YouTube I mentioned at number 4 on this list. So anyways, at 10:15 that night, one of those on YouTube who got brainwashed into hating him made a claim that he faked his depression 3 months before that. And then my friend was messaging me about it. I tried to keep him from losing control, but it didn't quite work out. So he messaged me, bleep you. Of course I'm rephrasing it. And what made it upset me so much was that he wrote it in all caps and 11 exclamation marks. It made me feel extremely disappointed. So I went ballistic. And I had one of the greatest freakouts I've ever had. Then I absolutely despised this day for 3 months straight, and I just couldn't get over how horrible it was. It possibly even caused damage to other days in 2022 due to the aftertaste of it. But I know of some people who like this day, and if you do, I can handle your opinion. Now, bye everyone.